Hello Orchid friends, welcome back to my channel. Wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day, staying healthy and staying safe. Today in this video, we're going to look at one of my primary hybrids. This one is a cross between Equestris and Bellina. But the interesting thing about this orchid is that both parents are Alba form, and then this one came out to be, having dots or patterns on the flowers, and it's not completely white. So either it's mislabeled or genetically speaking, somehow the two Alba parents bring out the recessive, pattern genes, for the dots and the magenta color. I always have to say this. But when I first purchased this orchid, I was in the phase of wanting to collect orchids with dots or interesting patterns on the flower. And when I came across this one, I said to myself, wow, it's so interesting that it has all these tiny little dots. And it's from both Equestris and Bellina. Because we all know Equestris and Bellina, they don't have any patterns on the flower. So any dots or any, markings. So I thought that was interesting. But if we go back in time, this was when the orchid was put into the moss no drainage hole method. And it was growing just fine. It grew 1 or 2 new leaves, and then it was growing lots of new roots into the media. So it was a really good sign, and then it started to put out another spike. This orchid has always bloomed every single year since it became mature. So it's a very low maintenance, easy, hardy orchid. Obviously, during the time that it was maturing its buds, I did not move it around at all. That's the only thing I did or did not do. So other than that, it's very low maintenance. Oh, and the one on the right here is the Miniatris. So that Miniatris is also a cross between Bellina and Equestris, except Miniatris, the pop parent is Bellina, and the orchid we're talking about here, the one on the left, this one, the pop parent is Equestris, and that's why they look so different. Nonetheless, I love the tiny dots and the pattern on the flower. I love this orchid dearly. It also has fragrance. It's not as strong as Bellina, but there is definitely some fragrance. I do have to put my nose really close to the flowers to smell them, but it's fragrant. And it behaves more like an Equestris if you look at the leaves and how it grows its flower spike. Everything screams Equestris. Everything screams Equestris. Just even also the fact that how it produce flower buds, like with Bellina, because it's sequential bloomer, so every time it kind of just give you that one or two flowers kind of way. But with Equestris, it will give you a few and then it continue to grow a few buds. It always is in groups, a few. So there, this is, and oh, by the way, and it doesn't have a registered name, so it's always gonna be a cross between Equestris and Bellina. I don't know the official registered name, if there is one. So if you know if there is an official registered name, please make a comment in the video, in the comment section below the video. Let us know. But overall, I really think this orchid is a interesting orchid. And also another thing I noticed is that the flower, the back of the flower, and also the stem of the flower, it's white, but it's not the pure white. It's almost like milky white. It's always very, very milky white. It's that opaque white. So it's another interesting thing. In terms of care, this orchid gets 1/4 cup of water. And every week, obviously, when I give this orchid that 1/4 cup of water, this water already contains the fertilizer that I want to give to this orchid. And the concentration is 1/4. So 25% quarter strength fertilizer. That's what I give to this orchid, just like how I give to most of my orchids in the collection. And it seems to be doing just fine. It doesn't require that much more fertilizer. In fact, I prefer weaker fertilizer concentration, because that way I don't have to worry about having to flush or soak this orchid to wash away unnecessary salt buildup from fertilizer. The one thing I hope this orchid would do later is, as it gets more established, I hope this orchid will produce keiki for me, and this is the only orchid that I would love to have more, but I haven't been able to see any other sellers selling this cross. Anyway, so after the blooms are done, I started to see this orchid, retiring its older leaves, but then I also see that there were some roots dying inside the medium, so I decided to take it out and have a proper cleanup. But during the cleanup process, I was thinking to myself, do I want to use a different method? And it just so happened that I ran out of sphagnum moss, so obviously I can't reuse the moss, because maybe it was the old moss that's causing the root dieback. So I decided that maybe it's time for a new method for this orchid. So I did what I had to do. I took off the moss, and then I trim off unnecessary or dead tissues of the roots, and then I used my hands to kind of wrangle up or gather all the roots, including aerial roots, and basically I tried to slowly put all the roots, including aerial roots, back into the cup. And it's doable, because every time I would try to soak the orchid and then bring it under a faucet and just rinse it. So the aerial roots were also somewhat wet, and so they're much more manageable and not as brittle when they're wet. So this is what it looked like after the repot. It's going to be a traditional setup. There are drainage holes at the bottom, and this is what it looked like after the initial repot. It's dry. You can see the smaller pebble, they're quite light in color because it's quite dry. I actually waited a week after the repot before I gave this orchid any more water. It was doing good. And here is 1 month after the repot. You can see this orchid responded very well by growing lots of new roots. So it's awesome that this orchid is responding, growing roots. So I have big hope for this orchid for the next flowering season. I hope it will produce many more flowers than this year. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!